And so if the media team want to put up the slides, I can walk you through those. So this here is just some of the open-air crusades that occurred. And I mean, it was literally like 25 years of prayer and birthing this miracle. And for some of you that may not know my background, I grew up in India. At the age of 8, my family and I, we moved to Albuquerque, New Mexico. At the age of 15, I first heard the gospel. At the age of 20, I committed my life to Christ. And from that point on, I just had a huge burden for my people in India and just a huge burden for so many that were in spiritual darkness, and carried that burden, for 25 years. And this was like the culmination, I felt like, of all those years of prayer. And so so it was a very emotional trip for me. And, it was also just amazing how God exceeded my expectations all around. My dad, he comes from the Brahmin caste, which is the priestly caste in India, which is the highest caste. And, there's like 5 people groups in all the world with nearly a 0% Christian rate, and Brahmins are one of those 5. So it's just amazing how God brought me out of India, took me to Albuquerque, put me here, and 23 years of investing in me, sending me out to India. So just remarkable. So you can go to the next slide. Just to give you a little bit of spiritual demographics and landscape, if you see those red dots, that's people groups that are unreached and have never heard the gospel. So the highest concentration of it is in India, and they have over 400 million who have never heard of Jesus and over 1 billion that don't profess to follow him. So just, the magnitude is just immense. Next slide. And I've been watching the World Watch List over the years, and India has come up since 2019 to be in the top 10 countries where it's most difficult to follow Jesus, primarily because of their government. So I've been hearing, so many reports over the years of just firsthand the persecution and things taking place. So it just bred in me just so much more of an urgency to want to go. Next slide. So this was kind of the layout of my trip. All the pins are the places I traveled through, 14 flights, 17 cities, 22 days in India and Nepal. Now, this was a miracle because when I went in, I thought I was going to do 6, maybe 8 meetings, and I wasn't fishing for meetings, and I wasn't trying to put myself out there to preach. I just said, I just come to serve. I'll clean toilets, whatever you want. And so it was just amazing how God opened doors for 25 meetings, So every day it just seemed like everywhere I went, doors would open up. They would schedule meetings within 12 hours notice. So it just, it was amazing to see. And a miracle that I didn't miss a single meeting. With 14 commercial flights, it was incredible because so many things happened before and after that could have delayed me. I mean, just 2 days after flying out of Nepal, there was a flight that had crashed there. There were thunderstorms, different things. So it was just amazing how everything fell into place. Next slide. Not that I focus on numbers, but I just wanted to have you see the fruit of your harvest because you prayed into this, you invested into this, and so had a chance to minister to 2,400 people, 200 salvations, 1,800. Just hungry and thirsty for the baptism of the Spirit. And I put a strong emphasis on the baptism of the Holy Spirit and speaking in tongues because the last time I went, I talked a lot about salvation, and I regretted that I didn't mention so much on the Holy Spirit and tongues. So this time, everywhere I went, I made sure to minister on that. And then 1,000 came forward for prayer. And then there was at least 15 confirmed healings firsthand, several healings from pain in various areas, that I listed there: neck, hip, back, mouth. There was a lady who had her back healed, and she could bend over, but she couldn't do. Couple of people who had hearing loss that had their hearing improved. My cousin, he had shivering hands, and it was so bad he couldn't hold a glass. And after prayer, he had control over his hands, and he could hold his glass. One of the meetings, there was a boy who couldn't ever speak, and then he started to speak a few words there. And then also deliverance from evil spirits too. Next slide. This was the first meeting in Northwest India in Punjab. And Punjab's known for Sikhs. And so if you see people with the turbans, they follow the Sikhism religion. So this is predominantly where this setting is. You go to the next slide. So my first introduction and my first meeting, we had 3 demon-possessed ladies that manifested. And this is one of them. She came out swinging, and then she began to choke herself, which is what she's doing in that picture. And she was, speaking in demon voices. And then we kept ministering to her, and then she began to throw up. And then there were so many coming up for prayer that I lost track of her. And at the end, it was just amazing because I caught her on the side view, and she was coming up for prayer, and she just had the prettiest smile, and you could tell that she was set free. So that was an incredible opening night. You can go to the next slide. This is another one, just another open air meeting, and these people, they worship for 2 to 3 hours. Then it's an hour-long message. Then it's an hour long for individual prayer. Then they all eat after all of that. So this thing goes about 5-6 hours, each service. You can go to the next slide. Reason I wanted to bring this gentleman up because we were just sitting at home with ministers, and he walked into the room, and I realized there's something very different about him, because if I tried to look into his eyes, I would begin to just tear up. And come to find out that he prays 8 hours at a time. And so I said, I want him to pray for me. And he prayed for me, and I just crumbled in tears. And it just showed me how he didn't have to say a single word, but just when he walked in the room, I was just in tears already. So just amazing on the presence of God. Next slide. This one, you can see who came down from the mountain. It's probably because the previous guy prayed for me. That's, I'm sure, what it is. It's unfiltered, by the way. Next slide. That was just for humor. This was another church meeting that I did, and a lot of these places, the pastor lives in the same place, so this is kind of his building, and he has the church there. You can go to the next slide. Reason I wanted to show this person here, the backstory is, so after a couple of meetings, I was just fighting a lot of insecurity. I was just feeling like, am I really making a difference here? There's other people that can preach so much better. And so I was fighting all these insecurities. And the pastor of the church, he told me, he said, there's a man, just a few weeks ago, he prophesied that there'd be a man coming from America to speak at my church. And he said, I was very skeptical because I don't know anybody from America. I've only had 2 guest speakers. They've all been from India. So when I came, this was a confirmation of this man's word that he gave that somebody from America would be coming. So it just confirmed to me that I was at the right place at the right time. Next slide. You can go back one. So these were the kids from then I went into the red light prostitution areas. And these were 24 kids that were at the hostel that were rescued from the lifestyle. A lot of their parents have sexually transmitted diseases, come from, broken homes, in and out of jail, etc. So these are the ones that I had a chance to minister to. And it was great because I just shared 15, 20 minutes on the power of the Holy Spirit and having the experience of praying in tongues, and led them all individually in praying in tongues, and heard each and every one of them for the first time pray in tongues. And one of the ministers noted, he said, we've been ministering here to these kids for over a year. This is the first time that they have broken down and wept, and for a half hour they'd be holding on to us, and so it was just amazing. And then so I prayed for 20 of them. There were 4 ladies left, and they were just in severe, just weeping and crying, and I thought it was because of my hardcore preaching, but come to find out, what they had done was they had eaten the chicken dish that was meant for the guests later that night. They had ate it earlier in the day, so they got severely reprimanded for it. So they were just in so much weeping and tears. But anyway, the others all got filled with the Spirit, though. So you can go to the next one. These are, again, with them. And, some of them were just so hungry. They were like, help me to pray in tongues more. How do I develop this gift? So got to share that more with them. You can go to the next slide. This is a home where the rescued women and kids from the red light area where they stay, and then they help them get restored and give them medical help and treatments. So this was just incredible. I mean, firsthand, going into these homes and places. You can go to the next slide. So the lady in the middle here, we got to go into her house. She's the middle person who does all the transactions between the pimps and the prostitutes. So we got to go right into where she lives, where the prostitutes are, and the money exchange happens, and got to lead her to the Lord and worship with her. And she was just so open and received us and received prayer. And so just another powerful transformation that occurred. You can go to the next slide. So we were traveling to this one tribal church village, and I happened to see all these kids. Come to find out, they were all going to the same church setting, So it was just beautiful to see all these kids going there. You can go to the next slide. And one of the things that really impressed me with these kids, I heard several of them praying in tongues just like right off the bat when I got there. And the pastor later told us, he said, they pray in tongues at least an hour a day. And that convicted me. I'm like, wow, I need to, spruce up my prayer time. But it was just amazing to see the heart of these kids. You can go to the next slide. This was in Kathmandu, Nepal. And again, had an opportunity to share with all these young adults who have come out of the red light district areas, come out of homes of prostitution. Many of them deal with addictions, in and out of jail. So got to share with them, pray with them, and just really saw some great healings and miracles occur there too. You can go to the next slide. This one was really cool because these are all the Bible translators that translate the Bible in the local languages of Nepal. Now, you guys probably don't know this, but you had sewed into a couple here that are over this work, and I just was so amazed at their stories because most of them, don't see their wives, kids, parents, families for months at a time because they're dedicated to this translation work. In order for them to go back home, it can be a 2-3 day journey, of walking and taking buses, etc. So they may go back home once or twice, every couple of months. And a couple of them shared how their parents were paralyzed. And, in such situations, they're solely dedicated to this task of translation. And it just bred in me, the depth of their sacrifice, just how valuable they are for the ministry, and that we got to sow into them. So it was just amazing. You can go to the next slide. We went to this Buddhist temple, and this was the head monk, and he prays over the people. It was cool because we shared the scriptures with him and prayed over him. That's why he looks so perplexed in this picture because, usually he's the one to give out prayer, but, we just took the step of faith and boldness to pray over him, and so that was cool. You can go to the next one. This was another church meeting, at a home, and you see them all sitting on the floor like that. They can sit like that for hours at a time. So it's pretty amazing their, just their hunger and their thirst. And it was in that meeting, by the way, where the boy who had never spoken began to speak. So that was just incredible. You can go, next slide. This was a really cool ministry led by a guy who's in his 20s. He rescues people that are dying on the streets, brings them to this facility, and this is like a hospice care. They've got 50 beds. All these people would have been dying on the streets, but now they can, have that process a little bit easier. And so there was 50 of them there. They were just so much fun to minister to and just loved us being there. And, you know, it's only one couple that takes care of all 50 24/7. They have to change their diapers. They have to do the cleaning, feeding, etc. Just this one couple that takes care of this whole operation. So it's incredible. You can go to the next slide. It's just me praying for a few of them, but you just see the conditions that they're in, you know. You can go to the next slide. Now, this was the last week, so this is in the tribal villages, very rural, you know, pretty hard to get to in a lot of these places, but they're just so honoring. You know, they had a lineup of all the kids, and they always greet you with a garland of flowers, and then they throw petals on you, you know, as you're walking in. So it's just really cool, the kind of honor that they show. You can go to the next slide. They had a kids camp, got to lead all these kids and praying in the Holy Spirit and speaking in tongues, and, you know, just great miracles there too. You can go to the next slide. Just more of the open-air crusade meetings in the night. Next slide. You know, you see a lot of them are women. They, you know, the meetings start at like 8 p.m. It will go till like midnight. Then they have to get up at 6 in the morning to work out in the fields. And this is night after night. So when we would get home, it would be about 1 o'clock after praying for all of them. Then at 1, they want to feed us all a big meal. So we eat a big meal. Then we have to take bucket showers because we're drenched in sweat, you know. And then we get to bed like after 2 a.m. So it's like night after night, and days they've got stuff going on. So it was quite intense. You can go to the next slide. This was really humbling as well. They had organized a pastors' meeting, and so there were 40-some pastors there. And, of course, I preached on the power of the Holy Spirit, filled with the Spirit and speaking in tongues. And 25 of them wanted to speak in tongues, and so we got to pray with more than half of them, you know. And one of the pastors, his shoulder got healed, didn't have pain anymore in his shoulder. But just other miracles that occurred like that in every meeting. So you can go to the next slide. Oh, yeah, this is valid proof. Heat index, 122 in the day, 106, you know, at night. And there was just a great grace to endure it. And the dress code there is you got to wear full sleeves if you're ministering. So Julie uses this slide against me because I was complaining yesterday about 80 degrees. So, but I like 60s personally. Yep. All right, you can go to the next slide. Again, more tribal church meetings after the Crusades. And then if you want to go to the next slide. This was a greatest highlight because at the end of the Crusades, you know, the pastor was telling me, he said, we haven't had meetings like this in over 3 years. He said, during the time of COVID, just in his state alone, 540 pastors had passed away. And so he was saying, you know, to have you come and do all these meetings and to have this kind of response. And there was 9 of them that got water baptized that day. And you see the pond that they're being baptized, and that's where the buffaloes bathe themselves. So it's a severe commitment, you know. And also, you know, when you get water baptized in India, it's like you're saying, okay, my family can disown me. I'm going to lose social, economic privileges, etc. You really stand out when you take water baptism. And so, you know, they got water baptized, and then they had several others wanting to get water baptized. So that was great. The other thing that was like the cherry on top on this whole trip was, and it wasn't planned at all till the very last minute, but the last day I was in my hometown Agra where the Taj Mahal is. And now I had been praying for my family for 25 years. So that last day I got to do a meeting after seeing the Taj Mahal. And at the meeting, 7 of my family members came, heard the gospel for the very first time. And, you know, it was just amazing response. Well, my dad, he heard about all the things that were taking place in India. I hadn't told him much about it. Not sure what his reaction would have been, but he began to hear of all the things, and he was thrilled. So he started telling everybody in Albuquerque, the Indian community there. So now they're in high anticipation of me coming to pray for them all, you know. And so it was just action-packed day after day. And there was just such a grace that was felt. And I know it was because of your prayers and, you know, all that you've invested in me all these years. And it was truly a dream come true, and I'm just very, very grateful for each one of you.